Users of Microsoft Windows 95 will know what that is, the jingle you'd hear when you'd log on. What you may not know is that it was composed by one of the most influential British artists and producers of his generation, Brian Eno. He's also the creator of ambient music, the down-tempo instrumental form of mood music that's long been used in documentaries and advertising. Brian Eno's been producing and making music for over 30 years. His legacy includes membership in Roxy Music and production and collaborative work with U2, Talking Heads and David Bowie. He's also an artist in his own right and has just released his first solo vocal album, Another Day on Earth, his first in 15 years. I caught up with him recently and asked him, why did it take so long to make it?
I gave up writing songs for a long while because I sort of lost faith in the form. I thought that there were so many people who were writing songs, and a lot of good songs. I thought what was really important was for someone to concentrate on all the other things that you can do in music. And so for a long while I was interested in what I would call the landscape aspects of music, all the other stuff that normally goes on behind the voice. But anyway, about 10 years ago, I guess, there started to appear some new technologies which enabled you to do things with voices that you really could never do before. These sort of auto-tuning devices and ways of altering the gender and the pitch of a voice so that you could sound like a high-pitched female instead of a man with a cold, which is what I actually am. And so suddenly singing started to become interesting to me again, because I started to think that instead of the singer being somebody who's sort of presenting their own personality, which is what you normally think singers are doing, if you started using these ways of changing your voice, you could really be like a playwright who invents a character and then has them play a part. You know, the character doesn't have to represent the playwright at all.
One of the things that you mentioned there that you took on and decided to concentrate on less of the actual songwriting craft, but did you actually feel that at any time that by doing so you would actually throw light onto how important the instrumental craftsmanship is?
Yes, that's what I hoped. For me, the recording studio really is such an amazing invention. I think people who don't work in music really don't have much idea now how it's generally made. They still imagine that what usually happens is that people walk into a room with lots of microphones and sing and play, and that's how the record is made. Well, I would say only about 20% of records are made like that now. What happens with most records is that they're more like paintings, actually. You know, they're made over a long period of time. They're not single performances, and they're made by people sticking things together and adjusting things and changing them and stretching them and recoloring them, and all the sorts of things that you know that painters do.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, when it comes to like the craftsmanship of instrumentation, how long does that take? I mean, how long does it take from the form of a sound and any sort of interjections of that sound to create a musical landscape for you and it actually becoming a reality?
That can vary hugely. One of the songs on this record, the first one in fact, was made from start to finish in less than a day. So from the very first noise to the finished song actually took less than a day. There's another one on here that I worked on periodically over a period of 6 years, and it has very little to do with the final quality of the songs, how quickly they're done. Sometimes you just happen to hit lucky first time and the ingredients all fall into place, and you've got enough excitement to carry the thing through. In order to ever release anything, you have to just say to yourself, okay, by that date I'm going to have a record out, because otherwise I never would release anything. In fact, in my studio I have walls and walls and walls of CDs of stuff I've never released. Really? And I estimate that I release between 1% and 4% of everything that I record. So I have a huge rejection rate. So when I die, they're going to have a party with all those posthumous albums.
Now, one of the things that I wanted to read something to you that I read about you. It says here of your 1975 accident that which in many respects was said to have led to the creation of ambient music from you. It says that unable to move or to turn up his stereo to hear above the dim of the rainstorm, you realise that music could assume the same properties as light or colour, blending thoroughly into its given atmosphere without upsetting the environmental balance. Would you say that was the correct narration of how you felt? Frustrated, unable to turn music up, and then you thought it was like a light bulb moment?
Yes, well, yes, I was incapacitated. I couldn't move, and I asked a friend of mine to put a record on as she was leaving. She'd been to visit me, and she put the record on. It was actually a virtuoso harp music, and then she left, and by the time the needle had actually got into the groove, I realised it was much too quiet, and so you just occasionally heard a little bing, boom, boom, in with the raindrops, and at first I was very annoyed, and I certainly would have changed it if I could have moved. And after a little while it just became the most beautiful thing, because it actually made the rain sound like music. It was as if the rain was included in the music. And I thought, that's a very interesting new role for music, to just sort of fit in with things, not to impose itself. So I had this idea of endless and edgeless music, and that became ambient music, actually.
Now, one of the things that we're discussing this week is music's role and relationship with advertising, which has changed and it is continually changing. How do you feel about the fact that the music that you said that you wanted to create, which was non-song-written based, that would evoke mood, that would you could actually create scenes just from what you're hearing, how that's just like utilised to advertise beer or sanitary protection or, even holidays? How do you feel about things like that?
Well, what I think is that there's very little to distinguish most products from each other. There's nothing really much between one washing powder and another, or one toothpaste and another. So the differences are conferred upon them by what you surround them with, by what visuals you give them, what lifestyle associations you give them, and what music you give them. So what you have to think, if you do allow your music to be used for toothpaste ads, you have to think, okay, I'm now in the toothpaste business, because actually you're contributing more to the experience of the toothpaste than any of the internal ingredients are. It's not the kind of thing I really want to be persuading people about.
Right.
I don't particularly mind if people have feelings about toothpaste. And, in fact, I even do.
Right.
But I think that of all the things I could do with my time, thinking about toothpaste is probably one of the less valuable ones.
At first I thought this was a Chinese whisper, and I thought maybe I'd got this wrong. So every time I put my computer on, you're in my home, because you create that melody that greets anybody with a Microsoft package.
Well, it depends which package. I did the Windows 95.
You haven't seen my computer.
Are you still on that one, are you?
Right. Wages being what they are.
I did that little piece of music. 3.5 seconds long it is.
How does it get to be that a huge company like Microsoft comes to somebody who, wants to make music where a harp can be indistinguishable from a raindrop, and yet, you were talking there earlier about like the multinationals, the conglomerates, to many people Microsoft is the big bad wolf. But how did they approach you? Did you approach them? How did that all happen?
It was funny how it happened. I'd been working for a few months on some very, very long, slow pieces. And one day I got this letter, and it said, "Dear Branina, we want you to compose a piece of music for us. It should be passionate, engaged, entrancing, mysterious, interesting, deep, strong, playful, joyous." This long paragraph of adjectives like that. And then it says, "It should not be more than 3.5 seconds long." And I thought that was so funny. And it took you more than 3.5 seconds to read those adjectives, didn't it? I cracked up. I thought, well, this is an almost impossible task, and it was completely the opposite of what I was doing at the time. So I thought, well, I'll just see what happens if I try to work in that length of time, not expecting to get any result from it at all. And it was really interesting. It was like working on a jewel or a diamond, working on something very, very tiny and making tiny adjustments in it.
Musically, what interests you or, even arouses you today?
I've been listening to a lot of Arabic music lately, modern Arabic music, Arabic pop music, basically.
Really?
I like that very, very much. There's something so interesting going on there now. I think that will be the next reggae, actually.
Really?
It'll be the next sort of from outside type music that sweeps the culture, and everyone will be listening to it and thinking it's cool and everything.
Who are you going to be working with next?
I'm just doing some things with Grace Jones at the moment.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not having her sing in Arabic, are you?
No, she's singing amazingly at the moment.
Really?
Her voice is astonishing right now.
I'd love to hear her in patois, because she's Jamaican.
Yeah, she does on some of these songs. She goes into some very funny patois. Her patois is so funny, I think.
Tempered by her years in America.
Yeah. And on that same record is, well, the rhythm section is either Sly and Robbie, who are amazing to work with, or Tony Allen, who in my opinion is the greatest musician of the last 50 years. He was Fela Kuti's drummer, so Tony Allen really was the guy who invented Afrobeat,
Right.
which for me was the big event in music the last 30 years.
Legendary musician, producer and artist Brian Eno. I'll leave you with a track from his new set Another Day on Earth. This is Just Another Day. And next week I'll be bringing you a Music Biz special on a new phenomenon sweeping the stage from Puerto Rico called reggaeton. See you then.
Oh, it's just another day from Brian Eno's new album Another Day on Earth. This week's Music Biz was presented by Jacqueline Springer and produced by Bobby Seiler.